Hello there, welcome to News at 10 on Rajya Sabha television, your one-stop for the day's biggest developing news stories. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor and here are this morning's headlines. 21-point joint declaration to combat terrorism at G20. Leaders pledge a swift exchange of information. Prime Minister Narendra Modi presents 11-point action agenda. "122 countries adopt a global treaty banning nuclear weapons. This despite US, Britain, France and other nuclear powers boycotting negotiations at the United Nations. Two Jawans injured in a terror attack in Bandipora. Two of a family killed in ceasefire violation in Punch. Curfew in Tral on first anniversary of Burhan Wani killing. Half of Assam affected by flood with 17 districts hit. Death toll mounts to 22. Chief Minister directs cabinet members to visit affected areas. And Rafael Nadal, Andy Murray, Venus Williams and Victoria Azarenka enter top 16 at the Wimbledon Championships. The G20 summit in Hamburg is our top focus. Prime Minister Narendra Modi here named Pakistan-based terror groups Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed and has said that some countries were using terror as a tool to achieve political objectives. He also urged the G20 members for deterrent action against such nations. He equated JET and JET with the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, saying that their names may be different, but their ideology was the same. In the presence of world leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that international response to terrorism has been weak and said more cooperation was needed to fight the menace. He also presented an 11-point action agenda that includes the suggestions for the exchange of lists of terrorists among the G20 nations, easing and expediting of legal processes like extradition, and taking concrete steps to choke funds and weapon supplies to terrorists. The Prime Minister also reiterated India's resolve to implement the Paris Climate Deal.
Terrorist franchise, terrorist financing, safe haven तथा उनके स्पॉन्सर्स के विरुद्ध G20 देशों को एकजुट होकर सुदृढ़ तथा सशक्त कार्रवाई करनी होगी। एशियाई तथा यूरोपीय समाजों की सुरक्षा को इससे खतरा तथा अफगानिस्तान पर इसका बढ़ता प्रकोप एक गंभीर संकट है। गल्फ तथा पश्चिम एशिया में तथा नॉर्थ कोरिया को लेकर पूर्वी एशिया में बढ़ती हुई जियो पॉलिटिकल टेंशन चिंता का विषय है। पेरिस एग्रीमेंट के अंतर्गत सहमति को इंप्लीमेंट करना अनिवार्य है। भारत क्लाइमेट एग्रीमेंट को लेटर तथा स्पिरिट में इंप्लीमेंट करेगा।
So terrorism topped the agenda at the G20 summit first day, with all the leaders pledging a joint crackdown on the global scourge, saying that all terrorist safe havens must be eliminated in every part of the world. A joint 21-point declaration was issued on countering terrorism on the first day of the summit that resolved to facilitate swift information exchanges between various agencies, ways to fight terrorism online, strengthen cooperation between border agencies to detect travel for terrorist purposes, also working together to choke funding for terror activities, including working with the private sector, intensify capacity building and technical assistance in relation to terrorist financing hotspots. Now also working together to provide appropriate support to the victims of terrorist attacks. The G20 nations stressed that there should be no safe spaces for terrorist financing anywhere in the world. According to the declaration, low-cost attacks by small cells and individuals funded by small amounts of money transferred through a wide range of payment means are an increasing challenge. The G20 leaders also underscored that it was crucial to address the underlying conditions that the terrorists exploit worldwide. Meanwhile, at a time when Indian and Chinese troops are engaged in an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation in Sikkim, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping appreciated each other's efforts in advancing the BRICS agenda in Hamburg. Now, Xi Jinping hosted the informal meeting of the BRICS grouping at its chairperson. Later, both the leaders shook hands and had a brief conversation. In their speeches, the two leaders spoke about terrorism and economic momentum along with the member countries.
BRICS leaders met informally ahead of the G20 meeting in Hamburg. Addressing the participants, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said both BRICS and G20 groups should address terrorism, including its financing, franchisees, safe havens, as well as support and sponsors. The Prime Minister also appreciated Chinese President Xi Jinping for hosting the 9th BRICS summit in September in Xiamen province.
राष्ट्रपति शी की अध्यक्षता में ब्रिक्स की गतिशीलता तथा पॉजिटिव मोमेंटम ने हमारे आपसी सहयोग को और भी गहरा किया है.
Speaking immediately after Prime Minister Modi, Chinese President Xi Jinping appreciated India's strong resolve against terrorism and its social and economic development. He also praised the momentum that BRICS had acquired under India's chairmanship and through the outcomes of Goa summit in 2016. It will, however, be interesting to see if this appreciation translates into actual bilateral interaction between the two countries, who are locked in a standoff over boundary issues in Sikkim. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held bilateral meetings with his counterparts from Japan, Shinzo Abe, and Canada, Justin Trudeau, along with informal interactions with a number of world leaders on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Prime Minister Modi also had a brief chat with many top world leaders, including US President Donald Trump, British Prime Minister Theresa May, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and French President Emmanuel Macron. At the BRICS leaders gathering, Modi held informal meetings with Brazilian President Michel Temer and South African President Jacob Zuma as well. Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping also shook hands at the BRICS meet and had a conversation on a range of issues, according to MEA. The interaction between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping took place amidst bilateral tensions over the Sikkim standoff. And the G20 summit also saw a closely watched meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the summit. The two leaders discussed the alleged Russian hacking of last year's US presidential election during their first meeting. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Trump had accepted Putin's assertions that his country was not responsible. US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson described the exchanges as robust. Putin also called their meeting, which lasted nearly 2 hours, as an important bilateral. Other topics discussed during their meeting included the war in Syria, terrorism, and cybersecurity.
We appreciate it. President Putin and I have been discussing various things, and I think it's going very well. We've had some very, very good talks. We're going to have a talk now, and obviously that will continue. But we look forward to a lot of very positive things happening for Russia, for the United States, and for everybody concerned. And it's an honor to be with you.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, we spoke over the phone with you several times on very important bilateral and international issues. Well, phone conversation is never enough, definitely.
Президент Трамп сказал, что он слышал четкие заявления президента Путина о том, что это неправда, и что российское руководство не вмешивалось в эти выборы, и что он эти заявления принимает.
The president opened the meeting with President Putin by raising the concerns of the American people regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election. They had a very robust and lengthy exchange on the subject. The President pressed President Putin on more than one occasion regarding Russian involvement. President Putin denied such involvement. as I think he has in the past.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin also underlined the importance of staying calm in the North Korea crisis. Well, during a meeting with the South Korean President Moon Jae-in on the sidelines of the G20 summit, Putin said that the nuclear-armed Pyongyang should be dealt with in a pragmatic manner. Ahead of the summit, Moon had called for toughened sanctions against the North, but he now insists that he was ready to meet North's leader Kim Jong-un in a bid to ease tensions.
Очень острой, конечно, является проблема северокорейской ядерной программы. Здесь главное не терять самообладание, действовать прагматично, очень аккуратно.
아까 말씀하신 북한의 핵과 미사일 도발은 남북 간의 평화뿐만 아니라 동북아 전체의 평화와 안정에 대한 아주 중대한 위협이 되고 있습니다.
However, the G20 summit in Germany continues to be overshadowed by violent protests in Hamburg for the second consecutive day. Now, the streets of Hamburg were littered with debris in the early hours today after a second night of violent protests and rioting that saw anti-capitalist protesters facing off against the police. Wreckage was strewn across the street that earlier saw police deploy water cannons at the violent demonstrators who torched vehicles and plundered a supermarket. The protesters also broke windows in banks, they looted retail stores, set off firecrackers and hurled other objects at the police. Some 197 officers were injured in the 2 days of clashes in the port city. Police also made 19 arrests and detained dozens more. Meanwhile, heavy armed police commandos have now been moved in Hamburg after 2 days of violent protests for the final day of the summit today. A global treaty banning nuclear weapons was adopted at the United Nations on Friday despite opposition from the United States, Britain, France and other nuclear powers that boycotted the negotiations. The treaty was adopted by a vote of 122 in favour, with one country, the Netherlands, voting against, while Singapore abstained. Now, led by Austria, Brazil, Mexico, South Africa and New Zealand, 141 countries joined in drafting the treaty that they hope will increase pressure on the nuclear states to take disarmament more seriously. However, nuclear-armed states have dismissed the ban as unrealistic, arguing that it will have no impact on reducing the global stockpile of 15,000 atomic weapons.
This process enjoyed the overwhelming support of the international community. More than 130 states participated in the conference, and over 100 non-governmental organizations participated as well. Needless to say that the presence of the victims of the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and those also affected by nuclear testings throughout the world has been of vital importance for all the delegations.
And Pakistan Army today violated ceasefire along the line of control in Kashmir's Poonch district, killing 2 civilians. The Pakistani Army resorted to heavy mortar shelling and targeted Indian posts and villages in Chakada Bagh and Kari Karmara areas. Indian troops are giving a befitting reply. Meanwhile, in a separate incident, 2 soldiers were also injured after terrorists attacked an army patrol in Bandipora district. And Kashmir is on a high alert and security measures have been tightened as the valley braces for the first death anniversary of Hizbul Mujahideen militant Burhan Wani today. The curfew imposed in his native place of Tral with heavy police presence there. Mobile internet and broadband services have been suspended for indefinite period. Burhan Wani's death in an encounter with the security forces last year had triggered massive protests and unrest across the valley. Over 80 people were killed and thousands were injured in daily clashes between security forces and protesters for over 4 months.
अभी तक का जो एंटिसिपेशन है उसमें यही चल रहा था कि कहीं ना कहीं कुछ प्रोग्राम किए जा सकते हैं या सेपरेटिस्ट द्वारा कोई कॉल दी जा सकती है, बट अभी तक ऐसा कोई दिख नहीं रहा है. बट फ्रॉम द सिक्योरिटी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, चाहे वो नेशनल हाईवे पे है या साउथ कश्मीर में या श्रीनगर टाउन में, डाउनटाउन एरिया में, वहाँ सिक्योरिटी बीफ अप करी गई है और प्रिकॉशनरी मेजर के तौर पे रिस्ट्रिक्शंस लगाई गई हैं.
More news from Jammu and Kashmir, where the State Legislative Assembly passed the state GST Bill amid boycott by the opposition parties on Friday. With this, Jammu and Kashmir became the last state to join the One Nation, One Tax regime. The bill, moved by Finance Minister of the state, Hasib Drabu, was adopted by a voice vote in the absence of opposition parties, which accused the PDP-BJP government of undermining the special status of the state. The bill was moved in the Assembly after a presidential order which assured that the special status of the state, guaranteed by Article 370 of the Constitution, will be preserved. The GST regime was rolled out in the state at midnight yesterday.
इससे पहले मैं महामहिम राष्ट्रपति जी का आभार प्रकट करूंगा, उनको धन्यवाद दूंगा कि प्रेसिडेंशियल ऑर्डर जो है वो पास हो गया है और जम्मू कश्मीर में जीएसटी लागू हुआ है। मैं धन्यवाद करता हूं हमारे ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर का, फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर साहब का, लॉ मिनिस्टर हैं, होम मिनिस्टर हैं, उनका भी धन्यवाद।
And time to slip into a very short break here. We'll be back with more news.
The sacred relics of Buddha were unearthed in Piprava in Uttar Pradesh. Buddhist monks from all over the world visit the museum to pay their respects. These charred bone fragments of Buddha are housed in the gold canopy gifted by the royal family of Thailand.
Thanks for staying with us. On to situation in West Bengal's North 24 Parganas district. It remains tense. Now, state unit of the BJP will hold a rally in Kolkata. Later, they are also likely to meet Governor K.N. Triparthi today. Now, according to reports, the delegation might demand the imposition of president's rule in the state amid the violence. On Friday, sporadic incidents of violence were reported. Security forces fired tear gas shells to disperse the protesters.
Police and paramilitary forces marched through the troubled areas of West Bengal's riot-hit North 24 Parganas district on Friday. Even though the state government said the situation was under control in Baduria, Swarupnagar, Deganga and Basirhat areas, some sporadic incidents of violence were reported. Security forces fired tear gas shells to disperse protesters. Delegations of the Congress, left parties and the BJP were not allowed to go into the violence-hit areas. The police stopped them from doing so.
Even the police administration in Bengal now has deteriorated such a situation that they don't have the courage to reach out to the affected areas and give solace to the affected people. And that's why they have just cordoned off the areas.
আমাদের উদ্দেশ্য সেখানে কোনো উত্তেজনা তৈরি করা নয়। আমাদের উদ্দেশ্য সেখান থেকে কোনো রাজনৈতিক ফায়দা তোলা নয়। আমাদের একটাই উদ্দেশ্য, একটাই বক্তব্য যে দাঙ্গা নয়, শান্তি চাই।
It is not the peace in West Bengal that she is looking at. She is looking at that her TMC people can rule and command on everybody.
Earlier this week, clashes had broken out between members of two communities in Baduria and Basirhat subdivision of North 24 Parganas district over an objectionable Facebook post. Calling the communal violence as unfortunate, Union Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu has urged the state government to take effective steps to protect all people. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
More news from West Bengal. And the centre is keen to hold a tripartite talks with the Gorkha Jan Mukti Morcha and the West Bengal government to end the ongoing agitation in the Darjeeling Hills. This comes after JJM has demanded from the centre to initiate a dialogue of a separate state of Gorkha land. Now, according to reports, the centre wants to hold a dialogue with the agitating organizations to ensure peace returns to the area. Meanwhile, internet services remain suspended as the protest entered the 24th consecutive day. Police and security forces patrol the streets of the hills and are keeping a tight vigil at the entry and exit routes. Except pharmacy, all the other shops, restaurants, hotels, schools and colleges remain closed. Remember, Darjeeling is witnessing unrest since 15th of June this year. The CBI on Friday registered a corruption case against former Railway Minister Lalu Prasad Yadav, his wife Rabri Devi and his son Tejasvi Yadav. The case pertains to their alleged involvement in irregularities to do with tenders for hotels in Ranchi and Puri in 2006. Meanwhile, Union Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu has said that the government has no role in the CBI raids.
The Central Bureau of Investigation on Friday registered a corruption case against former Bihar Chief Minister and RJD Chief Lalu Prasad. Lalu Prasad is accused of helping a private firm get a tender for maintenance of 2 railway hotels in 2006 when he was Railway Minister. Also named in the CBI case are Lalu's wife Rabri Devi, his son Tejasvi Yadav, former MD of Indian Railway Catering and Tourism Cooperation and directors of private firms. Earlier, the CBI conducted searches at 12 locations across Patna, Delhi, Gurugram and other places.
प्राथमिक इंक्वायरी में ये पाया गया कि ये टेंडर अवार्ड करने में कुछ गड़बड़ियां की गई हैं और इस प्राइवेट कंपनी को फेवर्स शो किया गया है और उसकी एवज में श्री लालू प्रसाद यादव और उनकी फैमिली को पहले एक जमीन दी गई.
Hitting out at Prime Minister Modi and the BJP, the RJD chief called the searches a conspiracy.
31 मई 2004 को मैं रेल मंत्री उसके पहले ये सब हैंडओवर हो चुका था. एनडीए की सरकार थी. चुप करिए ना. अटल बिहारी जी वाजपेयी प्रधानमंत्री थे.
Lalu's party, the RJD and other opposition leaders also accused the BJP of indulging in vendetta and said it will fight the charges legally and politically.
Today's date shall go down in contemporary history as one of the darkest days. You know why I say this, and I say this with conviction, that there is a predictability about these kind of agencies. You can actually say that where they are going to sit next. You know why? Because suddenly these instruments have become new alliance partners. These agencies have become new alliance partner for the BJP.
तो रेलवेज ने 13 साल से उस टेंडर को कैंसिल क्यों नहीं किया? जवाब है मालूम नहीं. क्या रेलवे अब टेंडर को कैंसिल करेगी? जवाब है मालूम नहीं. क्या रेलवे ने उस कंपनी के खिलाफ कार्रवाई की जिसको टेंडर दिया गया है? जवाब नहीं. तो अब आप निर्णय कर लीजिए.
Law takes its course. No problem. But there are apprehensions in the minds of people whether this is a selective right in order to silence Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav.
However, Union Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu said the government and the BJP had no role to play in the CBI searches.
The government or the party has no role in it. Let me make it very clear. Instead of facing the charges and answering the charges, making political allegation against the government and the BJP has become a fashion.
A general alert was sounded across the state after the CBI action that started at 7 a.m.
जो भी सीबीआई की कार्रवाई चल रही है उसके मद्देनजर पॉलिटिकल रेमिफिकेशंस की संभावना बनी हुई है. इस संभावना को देखते हुए हमने पूरे राज्य में अलर्ट किया है और जो संवेदनशील इलाके हैं वहां पर हमारी पेट्रोलिंग चल रही है. हर जिलों के पास में अपने रिजर्व बल भी हैं.
The searches come weeks after the Income Tax Department surveyed locations in New Delhi and adjoining areas over corruption charges against Lalu's daughter Misa Bharti and her husband Sailesh Kumar. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
News from the northeast of the country as half of Assam has been hit by floods with 17 districts affected. The flood has affected 4.5 lakh people. The death toll in the deluge has now risen to 22. Now, Karimganj in Barak Valley is the worst hit district with 1.61 lakh people affected, followed by Lakhimpur in Brahmaputra Valley. 181 relief camps and centers have been set up in 11 districts. Now, the river Brahmaputra is flowing above the danger mark in Jorhat, Sonatpur, Gorbala and Dhubri district. Rhino habitats, the Kaziranga National Park in Upper Assam and Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary in Central Assam are underwater. Now, Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal has directed all his cabinet ministers to visit affected areas, take stock of the flood situation, step up relief and rescue operation and ensure proper facilities for those affected. The Supreme Court has restrained IITs across the country from conducting further counselling and admitting students on the basis of the results of IIT JEE 2017 results till further orders. The court also restrained the high courts across the country from entertaining any fresh petition relating to the counselling and admission to the IITs. It directed the registraries of the high courts to inform it about the number of petitions challenging the IIT joint entrance exam and awarding of additional marks to all the candidates who have appeared in the test. The petition filed by an IIT aspirant, Aishwarya Agarwal, had sought the court's direction to declare that the action of awarding bonus marks to candidates who had appeared in the exam was wrong and violated her right as well as that of other students. On to some international news now. 23 soldiers have been killed after Islamic militants attacked remote Egyptian army posts in the Sinai Peninsula with a suicide car bomb and heavy machine gun fire. This is the deadliest attack in the turbulent region in 2 years. Yesterday's assault began in the early morning when a suicide bomber rammed his vehicle into a checkpoint at a military compound in the village of El Barth, which is southwest of the border town of Rafah. Dozens of masked militants then descended on the site in 24 Land Cruiser SUVs and opened fire on the soldiers with machine guns. The shooting lasted nearly half an hour. The troops at the compound were estimated to have numbered about 60. The US, Russia and Jordan have agreed to put in place a ceasefire across southwestern Syria, which is due to begin on Sunday. Now, Jordan has said that the ceasefire will take place along a line agreed by both the Syrian government forces and rebels. The ceasefire was announced after US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin met in person for the first time on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Now, during their meeting, the leaders discussed a wide range of topics, including the war in Syria. The ceasefire would cover the regions of Dara, Quintra and Sweda. Russia and the US would coordinate with Jordan to act as the guarantors of the observance of ceasefire. On to sports, and India continued its fine run at the 22nd Asian Athletics Championships, winning 4 gold medals so far on the rain-hit second day of the competition. It was a brilliant day for Indian quarter-milers at the Asian Athletic Championships, with national champions Mohammad Anas and Nirmala winning gold in the women's and men's 400 meters event. Middle distance runners added to India's gold medals tally on day 2, while Chitra PU won the women's 1500 meters race. Ajay Kumar Saroj finished first in the men's race, qualifying for the World Championships. And in cricket, India would take on South Africa in the ICC Women's World Cup today and will look to continue their winning run after winning all the 4 matches so far in the tournament. South Africa are currently 5th in the points table, while India are 2nd. India are in a good form. They have so far registered 4 wins in 4 games. On the other hand, South Africa would be looking to gain momentum back in the tournament. And in Wimbledon Championships, Rafael Nadal, Andy Murray and Roberto, along with Venus Williams and Victoria Azarenka, have entered the top 16 at the championships. Rafael Nadal stormed through the 3rd round with a straight sets victory over Karina Khachanova to reach the last 16. Andy Murray came through a thrilling encounter against Italian showman Fabio Fognini to book his spot in the 4th round. Roberto Bautista Agut also reached the 4th round. Meanwhile, in women's singles, Venus Williams saw off the challenge of Japanese teenager Naomi Osaka in the 3rd round, as well as Victoria Azarenka extended her Grand Slam comeback into the 2nd week by beating Heather Watson 3-6, 6-1, 6-4. That's all in this edition of news. Thanks for watching. Have a great day ahead.